Fifth Sunday in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of Job. Job spoke, saying, "Is not man's life on earth a drudgery? Are not his days those of hirelings? He is a slave who longs for the shade, a hireling who waits for his wages. So I have been assigned months of misery, and troubled nights have been allotted to me. If in bed, I say, when shall I arise? Then the night drags on. I am filled with restlessness until the dawn. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. They come to an end without hope. Remember that my life is like the wind. I shall not see happiness again." The word of the Lord.
Praise the Lord, for he is good. Sing praise to our God, for he is gracious. It is fitting to praise him. The Lord rebuilds Jerusalem. The dispersed of Israel he gathers. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord who heals the brokenhearted. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He tells the number of the stars. He calls each by name. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord who heals the brokenhearted. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. To his wisdom there is no limit. The Lord sustains the lowly. The wicked he casts to the ground. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord who heals the brokenhearted.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, if I preach the gospel, this is no reason for me to boast, for an obligation has been imposed on me, and woe to me if I do not preach it. If I do so willingly, I have a recompense, but if unwillingly, then I have been entrusted with a stewardship. What then is my recompense? That, when I preach, I offer the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel. Although I am free in regard to all, I have made myself a slave to all, so as to win over as many as possible. To the weak I became weak, to win over the weak. I have become all things to all, to save at least some. All this I do for the sake of the gospel, so that I too may have a share in it. The word of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. On leaving the synagogue, Jesus entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Simon's mother-in-law lay sick with a fever. They immediately told him about her. He approached, grasped her hand, and helped her up. Then the fever left her, and she waited on them. When it was evening, after sunset, they brought to him all who were ill or possessed by demons. The whole town was gathered at the door. He cured many who were sick with various diseases, and he drove out many demons, not permitting them to speak, because they knew him. Rising very early before dawn, he left and went off to a deserted place where he prayed. Simon and those who were with him pursued him, and on finding him said, "Everyone is looking for you." He told them, "Let us go on to the nearby villages, that I may preach there also. For this purpose have I come." So he went into their synagogues, preaching and driving out demons throughout the whole of Galilee. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from the book of Job, chapter 7, verses 1 to 4 and 6 to 7. This passage comes from the part of the book of Job after he suffered the calamities, after he's left scraping sores off his body on a pile of dung. What does he say? Man's life on earth is a drudgery. That life is just waiting to die because it's so swift, it's so miserable that it's like the wind. It flies by, you're not going to see happiness again. Certainly that's a very depressed passage, but remember what he's going through, and we should have the decency to respect his difficulties. Sometimes when people are depressed, we say to them, "Oh, get out of it, put a smile on your face." And we don't recognize that there are appropriate times for depression. And then there are the depressions that are caused by biological problems or psychological problems. It's not for us to make the whole world smile simply because we want to smile. We have to recognize the pain that is in the world and sometimes cry along with those who are crying. The second reading is from 1 Corinthians 9, 16 to 19 and 22 to 23. Paul preaches the gospel, and what's the recompense for preaching the gospel? Simply the ability to preach the gospel free of charge. That the very fact that he can give of himself totally is the recompense. The greatest gift that God ever gave us is the ability to serve others. And the reward for that service is the ability to serve others. We shouldn't look for any other reward. If we're only doing this so we get a better seat in heaven, isn't that very selfish? I'll put up with 70 years of misery as long as I get an eternity of joy. We're thinking about ourselves. Paul has made himself a slave to everybody, and he considers that an honor. That God has called us not to think about ourselves, but rather to think about others and serve them, with the cost of our very life. The Gospel is from Mark 1, 29 to 39. We hear that Jesus goes to the house of Simon and Andrew, and he heals Simon's mother-in-law. The fever leaves her, and what does she do? She immediately waits on him. Isn't that the appropriate response to a favor received from God? To want to return the favor, to want to do something for someone else. We also hear that he heals many people who have various problems, but then when he goes to pray by himself and the apostles say everybody's looking for you, he says we've got to preach the gospel all throughout Galilee. That we can't just make a comfortable home for ourselves. Our mission is one of a journey. Now, for some people that means going to mission lands, things like that, but for most of us, we stay settled in one place. But even in our faith life, we can still be on journey. That we can't have the same faith we did when we were 3 years old, when we were 12 years old, when we were 20 years old. Our faith has to evolve, it has to deepen. At times it even has to be challenged. We have to have those moments of doubt so that we can respond with a greater faith, a faith that goes beyond what it seems possible to believe, what it seems possible to trust. And may God bless us.